What's up, guys? Welcome back. Hayden Schaap here. I'm going to be doing a very brief live with my study on 7 habits of highly effective people. We're on habit 1, be proactive. And I'm here at the office, although this is not affiliated with the company that I work with. It's my own thing, but it's just easiest for me to shoot this at the studio at the office here using my own equipment. But yeah, if you like what I'm doing here, or at least you're gaining insights from the stuff that I'm learning, I'm studying 7 habits with the intent to teach, in hopes that will help me more solidify the profound concepts that these have been in my life already, and further solidify them as I seek to, grow as a person and live my life full of integrity in all the roles and the aspects for the people that I care about most. So that's what I'm doing, studying with the intent to teach. And I thought, what better way to do that than just make it public, so that I really have to pay attention, because I know that I have to do it. So we're going to get into this. If you like what I'm doing, or if you're getting insights, like I was saying, comment what you like. And if you don't like it, then like I said before, I just don't actually care, because this is for me more than anyone. All right. Let's see, 7 habits. Here we go. Okay, so we're on this part of listening to our language. And I won't do a summary of what we've talked about before. You can watch the previous episodes, but this is habit 1, be proactive, listen to our language. So because our attitudes and behaviors flow out of our paradigms, the way we see the world, if we use our self-awareness to examine them, we can often see in them the nature of our underlying maps. So I really like this idea of being able to identify. Covey's basic point here is, in order for you to actually align your life with the things that will bring true meaning, happiness, and like a profound impact in the areas of your life that you actually care about most, the way to do that is to first recognize what your own view of the world actually is, and recognize, like, is your view of the world, or are the paradigms, is the lens through which you see the world accurately reflecting how the interdependent true principles function in that world. So like, if you think that being a dishonest person and lying all the time is actually what is going to get you ahead in life, that's not an accurate map. That might be the way you view the world, because maybe that's how you were raised or whatever, as an example. But the truth of the territory of the world as it really is that honesty is actually what brings, is the thing that most functions accurately or properly in the world. So my goal, if I'm going to try to change my life, is to align myself to how the world actually is. Be honest, for example. Another one is like fairness. If I think the only way to win is that other people have to lose, then, and that's the way I see the world, that's not actually how the world functions most properly or most optimally. The most optimal situation is that it's a win-win for everyone, in order to providing actual value, not just making it so that I win and others lose. But if I don't see the world that way, but yet the world actually does function in that way of, win-win is most optimal, then it's going to be really hard for me to not be frustrated whenever things don't go my way, right? I'm not explaining that incredibly well, but that's just what he's talking about when he talks about, like, our attitudes and behaviors, they flow out of our paradigm. So how we live is just based off of how we view the world. And if we use our own self-awareness to examine how we are viewing the world, we can often see that in them the nature of our underlying maps. Our language, for example, is a very real indicator of the degree to which we see ourselves as proactive people. So how proactive we are or are not can be determined, like the way you can identify that in yourself is basically just identify how you're speaking your own language. The language of reactive people absolves them of responsibility. I have this joke with the sales reps that I work with, is that I choose, like, we always use this phrase, like, I choose to have to go out and sell today. I choose to have to be my best self today. Instead of saying, like, I have to sell today. No, you don't have to. No one's forcing you to do anything. You're choosing to, instead of suffering the consequences of not, right? I have to be home by this time. My wife says I have to be home. You don't have to. You're choosing to want to be home at that time. You're choosing to attempt to be home at that time, right? That's me. That's just the way I am. I'm determined. there's nothing I can do about it. He's just reflecting what these statements actually mean, what your language actually means. He makes me so mad. What that means, I'm not responsible. My emotional life is governed by something outside my control. This has been really insightful for me as I've been trying to like re-script myself and become a more proactive person, is really paying attention to my own language. And like, it is interesting how often I start to use the terminology of like, oh no, I can't because I have to. So like if someone, because my time right now is being demanded by a lot of people, and so that's the hardest thing for me, is to say no. So when someone says, hey Hayden, can you train with me this week, like the lowest thing on the totem pole for my job is doing individual sales rep training, because I have like a couple layers of leadership that can do that, or that should be doing that as part of their main core function of their jobs. And so if I have a rookie sales rep that says, hey Hayden, can you train with me, and let's say that they have 2 layers or 3 layers of leadership before they get to me in the hierarchy, I find myself wanting to say no, I can't, because but that's actually not true. I can go train with them. But how refreshing is it? I've tried to do this, because at first it sounds insulting and I like shy away from saying things like this. But I've been trying to do it more lately, where I say like, hey, I actually could train with you, but I'm going to choose not to, because you have other resources that are more optimal for you right now. And on top of that, I'm going to choose not to train with you because I actually spent 150 hours building out a sales training course that's the best sales training course I've ever seen. And I would highly advise that you use that first. But why don't we do this? Why don't you start going through the sales training, go train with your team leader, so that you get the best of both worlds. You get my value and you get your direct leader's value. And then proactively reach out to me, text me. I'm not going to I promise that I'm not going to probably text you back. So don't expect me to text back, but do yourself a favor by being accountable to me, by choosing to be accountable to me. You don't have to. Just like I don't have to not train with you because I can't. I'm choosing not to, but you can also choose to be this type of person. Anyway, that's just one thing I've been working on myself, is having the candor to say I choose not to, rather than saying I can't, or no, we can't go home for Thanksgiving. We can't this, we can't that. It's like, nobody's stopping us. What do you mean you can't? I'm just, what I'm saying is I've been trying to just accurately, in a proactive way, describe with my language, describe like my reality through a proactive lens. I can't do it. I just don't have time. Something outside me, limited time, is controlling me. If only my wife were more patient. Someone else's behavior is limiting my effectiveness. I have to do it. Yeah, this is exactly what I was saying. Circumstances or other people are forcing me to do what I do. I'm not free to choose my own actions. It's incredibly revealing what language actually means and how it affects us. This is like really powerful. Reactive language is, there's nothing I can do. That's just the way I am. He makes me so mad, blah, 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 blah. If only, I must, I can't, I have to do that. Proactive language sounds more like this. Let's look at the alternatives. Like, I can choose a different approach. I control my own feelings. I can create an effective presentation. I will choose an appropriate response. I choose, I prefer, I will. And this gets even more powerful when you start bringing in identity statements. Like, if someone is using identity statements like, oh, that's just not me, or like, I am not this type of person, I am not a good salesman. It's just like, identity statements are so damning if you're not careful. I'm not a good husband. I am a jerk. It's like, no, you're not. I have behaved this way in the past, but I'm choosing not to now, right? It's like really refreshing to start viewing the world that way. Okay. That language comes from a basic paradigm of determinism, and the whole spirit of it. Determinism is interesting. I love how Peter Thiel talks about determinism, in the sense that if something is predetermined, no one really tries to do otherwise, right? But that's not actually how the world is. Nothing is predetermined. It doesn't have to be. Like, we are the creators of our fate. We don't have to be the creatures of our circumstance. I'm not responsible, not able to choose my response. One time a student asked me, will you excuse me from class? I have to go on a tennis trip. You have to go? Or do you choose to go? I asked. I really have to, he exclaimed. What will you do if you don't? Why, they'll kick me off the team? How would you like that consequence? Well, I wouldn't. In other words, you choose to go because you want the consequence of staying on the team. What will happen if you miss my class? I don't know. Think hard. What do you think would be the natural consequence of not coming to class? You wouldn't kick me out, would you? That'd be a social consequence. That would be an artificial, like a self-imposed consequence. If you don't participate on the tennis team, you don't play. That's natural. But if you choose to not come to class, what would be the natural consequence? I guess I'll miss learning. That's right. So you have to weigh that consequence against the other consequence and make a choice. I know if it were me, I'd choose to go on the tennis trip, but I never say I have to do something. I choose to go on the tennis trip, he meekly replied. And miss my class? I replied in mock disbelief. Really, I love that. In fact, this reading it out loud actually has been more profound, this story, than when I've listened or read it the past 30 times I've read this book. It's really cool. I just how have I never thought that, like, the way to determine yourself, the way to become self-aware, like if you were trying to say, hey, what's one way that I could just become self-aware of who I am and how I see the world? Like, what if I just had only one way to try to decide or try to determine and become self-aware, which would mean I'm trying to determine who I am, the way I see the world, what would be the most optimal way to do that? And it had never dawned on me until just literally right now. The optimal way to do that is just to identify how your language. First of all, your outward language, like what you're physically saying with your words, your verbal words, but then also your internal thoughts, like your internal language. The things that you're auto-suggesting to yourself. Napoleon Hill says that we're always suggesting to ourselves on autopilot a message. It's just about choosing what that message is and making that message go from a conscious message that we want to be auto-suggested to a subconscious message. A serious problem with reactive language that it becomes a self-fulfilling prophecy. This is like really powerful. And it's not like metaphysical in any way, I don't think. Well, maybe it is, but I think it's more practical than anything. People become reinforced in the paradigm that they are determined, and they produce evidence to support the belief. Cognitive dissonance, I guess, in a way. And they produce the evidence to support the belief. They feel increasingly victimized and out of control, not in charge of their life or their destiny. They blame outside forces, other people, circumstances, even the stars, for their own situation. In one seminar, I was speaking on the concept of proactivity. A man came up to me and said, Stephen, I like that idea, what you're saying, but every situation is so different. Look at my marriage. I'm really worried. My wife and I just don't have the same feelings for each other that we used to have. I guess I just don't love her anymore, and she doesn't love me. What can I do? The feeling isn't there anymore, I asked. So the feeling isn't there anymore, I asked. That's right, he affirmed. We have 3 children. I'm really concerned. What do you suggest? Love her, I replied. I told you the feeling just isn't there anymore. Love her. You don't understand. The feeling just isn't there. Then love her. If the feeling isn't there, that's a good reason to love her. From what I know, my grandparents knew Stephen very well, and just talking with Stephen's grandson, he had a real sense of humor. But how do I love when I don't love? My friend, love is a verb. Love the feeling is a fruit of love the verb. So love her, serve her, sacrifice, listen to her, empathize, appreciate, affirm her. Are you willing to do that? In the great literature of all progressive societies, love is a verb. Reactive people make it a feeling. Oh gosh, maybe that's how you identify where society's at, is how they feel about the word love. You can tell where a society is on its trajectory based on how they view that word love. Is it a feeling only, or is it a verb, right? Because what he's saying is, like, the greatest societies in the history of mankind have, the most progressive and the greatest societies in the history of mankind have viewed love as a verb, not a feeling. Reactive people make love a feeling. They're driven by feelings. Hollywood has generally scripted us to believe that we are not responsible, that we're a product of our feelings. But the Hollywood script does not describe the reality. If our feelings control our actions, it is because we have abdicated our responsibility and empowered them to do so. Gosh dang. Proactive people make love a verb. Love is something you do. The sacrifices you make, the giving of self, like a mother bringing a newborn into the world. If you want to study love, study those who sacrifice for others. Even for people who offend or do not love in return. If you're a parent, look at the love you have for your children you sacrifice for. Love is a value that is actualized through loving actions. Proactive people subordinate feelings to values. Love, the feeling, can be recaptured. Next time I'll go into circle of influence and circle of concern. But I'm just going to give a quick recap. I'm going to give a quick recap right now of my learnings from today, okay? If I just studied with the intent to teach, here's what I learned today. So, the most powerful way to start changing your life and aligning the way that you live with your values and thereby having success, the most meaningful version of success in everything that you do, the most powerful way to do that is to become self-aware. Okay. Like that's really always the first step to change, is to becoming self-aware. And certainly, like Covey says, to quantum change is to become self-aware. So what dawned on me in my study this time was literally the most like effective way, the most optimal way to become self-aware of how you view the world, because that really is the first step in self-awareness itself, is gaining an understanding of the paradigm, the lens through which you view the world. Because we are not, so like Covey says, we see the world not as the world is, but we see it as we are. So like our lens through which we view the world is literally a reflection of us and who we actually are as people and how we view ourselves, right? So what I'm getting at in my learnings today is the most optimal way to become self-aware is to start to listen to the way that you speak and identify your language and start to really classify, like, is your language proactive? Does your language reflect someone who is in control of their circumstances? Does your language reflect someone who is a product of their life or the creator of their life? Does your language reflect someone who is a creature of circumstance and of everything around them, a victim to everything that happens to them, good or bad? Or does your language reflect someone who carries their weather with them, that is the creator of their circumstances, not the creature of it? And if you can just document, I mean, if you could just took a voice recorder and recorded yourself all day long and had someone transcribe it, and then you just read that and said, does this type of language reflect someone who is proactive by nature, someone who is in charge of their life, someone who is owning every aspect of their life? Or does this reflect someone who is a creature of every whim of circumstance in their life, and or even just their past habits, right, and attitudes? So like that, for me, that was the breakthrough in my study today, as I'm studying with the intent to teach, and then documenting that is like the most optimal way to gain control of your own self-awareness is to identify your language, your speech, and because words matter. And the more you can bend your words to accurately reflect how the world operates and the truth of the fact that like nothing is determined, you can go create the things that you want in life, that you can take thoughts and like mold, and you can take thoughts and will them into reality. It's not determinism. If I feel like everything's determined, I'm never going to try, right? But the most optimal way to do that and to start gaining control is to become self-aware. The best way to become self-aware is to start identifying your pattern of speech, your language, because what you speak becomes a reality, and it's a self-fulfilling prophecy. You're always acting out the most impactful thoughts in your mind. Like Napoleon Hill says, you're always acting out the most emotionalized ideas that you have. It's just a matter of whether they're emotionalized powerfully by fear or whether they are emotionalized by a proactive, whether they're emotionalized by a powerful, positive, neutral, proactive sense of belief that you are in control and that you can actually decide the things that you want and that it's worth doing so, right? So anyway, those are some just takeaways for me. And thanks guys for watching. And I guess we'll see you on the next one.